Hey, welcome to the series. Throughout this time, we're going to be looking at creating space between some of the things that we have to deal with in life, the necessary and the wanted. Now, to get us started, have you ever been at that place where you just had the breath knocked out of you? Whether it was playing a sport and you took a kick to the stomach, or the ball bounced a little bit how you didn't think it was and hit you right in the chest, but somehow you ended up on the ground gasping for air. And because you're so loved, people ran from all around to come around you and to check on you to make sure you're okay. And finally, someone with more wisdom than most said, hey, back up. You got to give them room to breathe. Or have you experienced it as you went off to college, maybe after that freshman year and you put on the freshman 15, or maybe it was after you got married or had kids. The season changed or a time in life changed and you pulled out those old clothes and you tried to put them back on again. And you couldn't get the button buttoned. And you said, my goodness, I just need some room to breathe. Well, that's what we're going to talk about over these next 4 weeks is how do we create space between? And kind of let you know what we'll be looking at over these weeks. We're going to be talking about how to create space between your current pace and your limits. How to create space between your busyness and your productivity. And how to create space between what you're working for and what you actually need. And all along the way, we're going to be asking this question: how do you define success? Here for this first week, we're going to look at priorities. And we all have a list of priorities. And if asked the question, we'd have a certain response to what our top priorities are in life. But if you want to know the truth and you want to figure out what your priorities truly are, look at the limited resources and how you're using them. Two main limited resources that everyone has some of, but they're limited, is time and money. And here we live in the United States of America, and many of us are pursuing that American dream. But in the midst of all the busyness and all the stuff we have going on to achieve the best that we can achieve, this American dream quickly becomes the American nightmare. In fact, if you look at what the statistics are saying, it's reported that 85% of extramarital affairs happen in the workplace. That the biggest areas of marital conflict are money, work, and children. Which brings us to another point. When it comes to our families, those of us who have children are trying to figure out how to fit them into the equation of all that we have going on. They have busy lives. And now when children these days have problems they're trying to deal with, too often times, us adults are too busy to help them deal with it. And we just say, hey, it's part of growing up. At some point they'll age out of it, or they'll understand, or they need to figure out how to deal with it on their own anyway. And we're making these excuses because we're so busy. And maybe the truth is that we just need to find some way to create some space between when it comes to our true priorities. Now, we're going to look at a story today here in Luke chapter 10. This is a story maybe some of you have heard before. It's a great story about sisters. So you take family and priorities and put them together. Here we go for a great story. Martha, the older sister, and Mary, the younger sister, have now had Jesus come to their house. And Jesus is spending time with them. And I'm sure they have great plans for a wonderful dinner, because that's how we roll here in the South. And I'm pretty sure it's how it was for them as well. And Martha is up getting everything cleaned up, looking the best it can look because, hey, you got Jesus in your house. While Martha's doing all this work, Mary's just sitting there and just hanging out with Jesus. Now, Martha, the older sister, finally gets to the point where she says, look, Jesus, help me out here. We're trying to do something for you. Tell Mary to get up and help me. And Jesus gives her this answer that maybe is shocking to us. Is nothing like what we would typically shoot for, nothing like what our schedule looks like in life when he says, hey, Martha, thank you for the work, but you know what? It's Mary who's getting it right. You see, what we have found in life is that busyness distracts us. Jesus knew it centuries ago, and some of us are still discovering it here today. In fact, busyness is the very thing that gets our priorities out of line. You need to create room to breathe, or parts of your life will suffocate. Parts of your life will literally die. And so, to create this room to breathe, what do? I think one of the things that we've got to get right is we've got to refuse to be overcommitted and distracted by these cultural norms. If you want to live a healthy life, have a healthy family, a healthy marriage, good job satisfaction, and job performance, you must create space between your current pace and your limits. And to do this, come to terms with your desired priorities. Sure, we all have the things that we say we really want most and how we want our life to look, but is that what we're shooting for? Which brings us to the second one. Come to terms not just with your desired priorities, but what are your actual priorities right now in the way you're using your limited resources? And finally, come to terms with your ability. You know, not everyone is capable of all the same things. Some can do better at certain things in life than others. You know what? That's okay. You just got to come to terms with your ability. So to close it all up today and get you started with some conversation, I want to ask this question. If we set our priorities to achieve the best, why is it that when tragedy strikes, our priorities change? And further, why do we wait for tragedy to address our priorities, the distractions, and to make the change? Over these next weeks, we're going to be talking about creating space between your current pace and your limits. Enjoy the conversation, some questions coming up right here.